Everyone, can you hear me all right over the mic? Yes? That was my first line. I already said it, so that's all. No, thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Jun. I'm one of the events coordinators here at Shelf Life Books. We're very excited to be hosting Single Onion number 208. 208! Woo-hoo. A special edition celebrating Black History Month. To begin, I'd like to say that we are gathered in celebration in Moh'kins'tsis on the lands of the Treaty 7 people, including the Blackfoot from Siksika, the Kainai and the Piikani, the Deni from Sutena, and the Stoney Nakoda from Menithni, the Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney First Nations. We also walk in the footsteps of the Métis people from Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. A little bit of housekeeping. There are books from the participants up front. These are for sale. Grab some, get them signed by the authors. Washrooms are through the door to your right, and there are refreshments available on the table in the back. There will be even more during intermission. That's all from me. I'm going to hand things over to David Martin.
Thanks, Jun. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. This is Single Onion 208. I missed the last two Single Onions. I hadn't missed a Single Onion in like 10 years, and then I missed the last two. So I'm back. I'm very happy to be back. I'm going to turn things over to our guest curator this evening. I'll be back later, which is a few little housekeeping reminders. But we're very pleased this evening to have Uchechukwu Peter Umeruzerke as our guest curator. Uche is an assistant professor at the Department of English at the U of C. He's an award-winning fiction writer, poet, and children's novelist. And his books include There's More, which June showed, Double Wahala, Double Trouble. I think I saw that there. And Wishmaker, which is an amazing children's book. And he's co-editor of Wreaths of a Wayfarer. So please welcome Uche.
Thank you very much, David. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I just want to use the opportunity to thank everyone. Can you all hear me? Yeah. So, just a little secret. Maybe David knows. Some years ago, I was practicing to be a stand-up comedian, but then I realized that anytime I tell myself joke or any joke, I hardly laugh, and so I realized that I was going to be a failed stand-up comedian or comic. So that's just a secret. And again, I thank David for making this space available for some fantastic poets who will be listening to this evening. And thank you all for coming, for supporting the arts, particularly in this time where it seems to be very difficult to talk about the humanities, to talk about literature, to talk about arts. And for the Philistines, for those who are anti-arts, I think they overlook the fact that what art or the arts do is to create this kind of space where we can come together and appreciate our common humanity, and also reinforce the fact that we all matter, irrespective of different divides, whether social, cultural, racial, national, ethnic, religious, or these different categories that try to keep us apart. So without sounding or trying to sound like a preacher or a sage, I would like to just say how the reading is going to be. So I think I should get a newer pair of glasses because, as you know, I'm short-sighted, but I need larger fonts. So today we are celebrating Black History Month, but equally importantly, we are celebrating literature and the power of poetry to bring us together and then to create a communal space where we also fellowship together. And so we'll be having the poets read in this order: Samantha Jones, Tolu Oloruntoba, Hioma Ozumba, and then lastly, myself. So I'll start with a short bio of each of these poets. Samantha Jones is a poet, editor, and earth scientist who has called Calgary home since 2006. Sam describes herself as a mixed-race woman or as both black Canadian and white settler with roots in Nova Scotia, Quebec, and Ontario. She's a journal and magazine enthusiast with words in CV2, Rome, GeoHumanities, the Capilano Review, the Fiddlehead, and elsewhere. Sam has two experimental chapbooks that explore living with OCD, site orientation, published by the Blasted Tree, and Wallpaper, published by Model Press. Our full-length poetry collection, Attic Rain, oh, over there, okay, was published by Nova Press in September 2024. And to my delight and surprise, Sam acknowledged me as one of the people who inspired her. So thank you very much for that acknowledgement. And without ado, I would like to invite Sam to this stage. And please, can we put our hands together for Sam?
Thank you so much. Yeah, maybe I'll have some. I'll pre-get the water ready, just in case. So I thought I'd read a couple things, not my book, and then a few things from my book, because I think I talked about my book too much. I know we're not supposed to say that, right? So I thought I'd maybe start with a couple of poems that were just recently published in the Fiddlehead. I really like to write about a couple of themes that show up a lot. The natural world shows up a lot in my work because I'm a geologist by training, but I also tend to use nature to explore health, whether that's like mental health, but also sometimes physical health. I live with chronic pain as well, so that's something that shows up. So I thought I'd start with a couple of health-ish poems and some maybe odes to Nova Scotia. So this one's called How to Spend Nth Day in Bed. Choose the bed by the window. Stack at least 4 pillows. Prop my head up to achieve the view. A tree full of sparrows. Magpies hop across blacktop. Haggle over toast. Each spindly foot a clasp set around its treasure. Black, brisk squirrels run between utility poles. The post carrier unloads a gray crate. My homebody sighs a G. Garage roof, mailbox moon, parking attendant rising. Leave every online health quiz unopened. Hold on to the words everyone shrugs off as phosphenes that will resolve themselves when I ease the pressure. It's that easy, they promise, as if saying it makes it so. Draw a line on the wall, demarcate the horizons that I lie below. Come up with a name for the zone I inhabit. Greet my benthic neighbors, search for their fuzzy backs with one outstretched hand. Show them where the lunch crumbs are. Ignore the circle of family and friends, quilting my eulogy, performing in front of me over and over, even though I'm still right here. I just can't move like I used to. Their cherished memories, ordered by value. Look at me there, wearing a beautiful dress, cured, window shopping in the streets, as if I'd waste my precious time if I could have it back. Oh, thank you. Low tide. We run across the shore, mud sucking at our bare feet, our boots left by the grasses to save us from losing them. We know there are clams burrowed just beneath us, but the cuts are so quick, so clean. We'll only notice them later when we peel off our socks after the long drive home, the fabric tacky with dried blood. Thanks. I just realized we match, so this was the right one to bring. This is one from CV2 a few years ago, which is one of my favorite things maybe I've ever written, so I thought I would bring that out again. I read it last week too, so don't get mad at me if you were here then. So this is 3 poems together, and it's a suite of poems called The Geological History of a Family. North Mountain is a mother. North Mountain is a fortress of familial flows, basalt layers preserved in succession, one lying on top of another, lava extruded and stacked, a reservoir uncapped and overflowed. In vast sheets, a dark fringe spilled along the Fundy shore. Each member cooled, crystallized, building on the one that came before. The cliffs are chronicles, fighting to quench time. They see the grass grow thick, dangle over their receding faces, and admit they can't resist aging or the persistence of water. Change is underway. North Mountain is a mother leaking hot fluid from deep within her breast. Clouded with the elements, her milk injects into open fractures, gurgles up through conduits, nourishes the eons encased in rusted rocks. Her sun-bathed surface is peppered with vesicles, tiny chambers lined with pink, orange, white, fibers and prisms, islands of color speckled across the black, brown, and gray. Busted, broken, she tosses a fan of rubble downslope to be rolled by waves and kicked around by boots, searching for a fresh surface cracked open. She waits for voices to shout, "Over here," and hands to pluck her druzy teeth from the vein. North Mountain is a warden watching the waves below knead the beach, coax apart the past with knuckles of foam and whitecap, power followed by a gentle undulation that tears off corners, atom by atom, spitting out sanded down cobbles. We look for palm-sized trinkets, large enough to brag about, light enough to tuck into pockets. We want her children, the rough ones, just ripped from the bluff, not yet softened by the tides. Thank you. Peninsula. The whole world pulled apart, its halves shoved to the sides of the spreading seas, each piece clutched clues and matching minerals, magnetized stripes on the ocean floor, breadcrumbs that traced the trail for more than 100 million years and all the way back to Pangaea. The Fundy Basin, a rift not full enough to tear Nova Scotia clean from the rest of the continent. A claim staked, a tug of war, quiet now, except for the rattle of ropes draped over the cliff, tugged taut through the understory, ferns and saplings pruned by hikers' feet and grappling fingers. High tide closes in, waves crash in crescendo, and the land whispers to the people below, the only way out is up. If you've never been to the Fundy shore, it's 18 meters is the tide. So quite literally, the only way out is up if you get trapped around the wrong area. So that's one of the places they're always warning people, really, really don't wait. You need to come back early. Banded agate. Deposits that grow from the outside in, filling voids, the grandparents, the parents, the siblings, the self, and back out again. Almost opalescent. Babies infusing wild into rigid layers of midlife distraction that amass coats of clout, collateral, a house cluttered with clothes and chairs and Christmas cards from the last 20 years. The core compressed under the weight of it, the center of laughter and silly dances buried under a heap of maturity. Pieces of silica, conchoidal, outlined with a knife's edge. Weeks, months, knocked around, reduced to worn-down nuggets of banded agate, peeled potatoes dumped out of the tumbler. Polished blue, gray, white, red orbs, generations, their softened horizons, rolled around in palms, passing by, colliding with flinty clicks, sagas cupped in childhood's hands. Thank you. Brought some random papers too, because we always need that. Let's see. Maybe this order is good. Okay. 1861 census. Canada West, Frontenac, City of Kingston, District Number 6, Part Rideau Ward. 7 souls listed, my ancestors enumerated, with tallies and ticks. A 1-story brick house, a horse in the yard. Given names penned in almost illegible cursive, claiming the whole column and most of the left margin. People that couldn't be crammed into this colonial template. And the clearest section, a list of 7 uppercase M's, their delicate overstrokes written with even pressure, each a well-practiced single movement with crisp ink, black ink. M is for mother with her husband and children. M is for member, each part of the household. M is for maker, to cook and sew dresses. M is for migration, a life north of the border. M is for many, the histories of places, Virginia, the Caribbean, New York, Ontario, the unknown before that. M is for movement, it runs in the family. M is for black and white, one of the ways they used to say it, one of the ways they sometimes still do. Thank you. Back to nature. This is a bird watching poem. Red phalarope. There is no one on the esker, rocky ridge, a remnant of glaciation, undulating across the lowlands. Snow melts and drains, runnels off the crest and down the still frozen flanks. I cast my arm and instrument, scanning a swath and settling on a spot to measure. The river slips around me. I forage for data below the water surface. She's half submerged, a rusty periscope sticking out of a water-filled pothole. I'll brag that I'm the first to spot one, even though she's not what I'm here for. It's after midnight, but the softened sun still shines, light partly stolen by mist. I become a wader too. Less daring than her, I stop when the water is 1.5 inches below the top of my boot. Some wiggle room. I tell you that I saw her, bathing in a dent in the road, describe her location by twists and turns and relations to other things. You'll have to take my word for it. I didn't write it down. We'll just do a couple of little mini ones from my book with all these lovely little faces on there. My son likes to tell everyone that he picked this, so thanks to him for great taste. On time. How do you live someone else's timeline? How do you measure adequate time? Is productivity asymptotic? How does one brain divide and conquer? How do you define urgency? Did you move on or move out? So these are all the OCD poems. And this one's fun because you can read it in many different ways, and sometimes I like to scare myself by just trying a new thing in the moment, so we'll see what happens. Home bitter home. Once I have settled on a path forward, for the night, day, weekend, free from fog, it's easy to keep an eye on things, tuned to connections that turn on and off. I end up with an iron that sits in its box for years before I give in and loan it to house guests who don't know the code of conduct, the way things must sit on their own, disconnected, disarmed, surrounded by a nothingness, empty space that fire can't jump. Who don't know the code of conduct, the way that things must sit, surrounded by a nothingness, on their own, empty space, disconnected, disarmed, that fire can't jump. I skip the home listings with gas ranges, kitchens to visit again and again. The worry would smother me. Thank you. And just 2 more little ones. Walking back to double check. I draw worry maps with invisible ink on carpet tiles, maple planks, my feet accomplices to assorted rituals, sometimes sparked by nothing at all, pure action. The day is made of many trails, back and forth, until I'm certain I'm capable of leaving well enough alone. I've made a life of treading lightly, the entrance and exit to this maze undetectable by most, until overlapping footprints up and down and up and down and up and down my front steps and into the snow give me away. Thank you. This is the last one I'll do. Always add acid to water. The dilution needs to be slow, 1 drip at a time. Gloved hands hold glass flasks inside a fume hood. Don't let the negative pressure steal the rhythm of your breath. Even as I write this, I double check so I don't mislead you into exothermic reaction. Thank you. Thanks. Enjoy your night. Thank you for having me.
Wow. Thank you, Sam, for that beautiful reading. And when you were reading the part about food, I was just wishing I had eaten before I stepped out of home. So now I feel my appetite has been sharpened. So hopefully Tolu is not going to read about food Well, if he does, maybe I will just show him the way out. So, can we put our hands together again for Sam? So once Tolu finishes reading, we're going to have a short break and go for snacks, I think, over there, right? And please stay around after the break. We have 2 more people reading. So I would like to invite Tolu Oloruntoba. But before then, let me just read his bio. Tolu has been an itinerant project manager, general practice physician, and editor. Is the author of the award-winning The Junta of Happenstance, published by Palimpsest Press, 2021. Each One a Furnace, published by McClelland Stewart in 2022. And currently, Unravel, which is coming out in a few months, in a month or 2 months' time. Okay, yeah. So please keep an eye out for it. His work has won the Canadian Griffin Poetry Prize and the Governor General's Literary Award for English Language Poetry. As you can see, we have a very august poet in February. So please, can we put our hands together for Tolu?
Thanks, Uche. David, thank you. Shelf Life, thank you. Single Onion, thank you. And thank you all for being here tonight to listen to poems. I get very dry mouth, so I need to... I'll be reading some poems from my upcoming book. It's going to be released in March. And then a few more just sprinkled in. I'm a little soft-spoken, so if you need me to speak louder, please let me know. The first poem is called Reclaim. I am the city fallen into the sea, but there remain acolytes in me, singing in the cathedrals, voices sanded with phlegm. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. They are wrong to trust me. If I know why their world is ending, or why it began, if I know the reason or the consequence of their lives, if I know the spin direction of their dwindling cosmos, I have not told them. I have not revealed myself. Thanks. Please feel free to hold your applause. I don't mind. Next poem is called Armada. We're not going anywhere. If we were, the towers we build against heaven, idling like rockets receiving coolant or fuel, would have taken us to new worlds. Towers must be the answer. The reason God famously said, "Let us bust their union." Our babble is fading into the American we all speak now, in unclear silos, subdued by the reptilian screams of espresso machines. Cometh now a new Nimrod to captain our ships, to find God for us on an evening stroll elsewhere, and ask them some questions. Thank you. Adrenaline tends to make your mouth very dry. Did you know that? Next poem is called Stigmata. It's about my child's doll. Not to be removed until delivered to the consumer. This is my body. Mimi the well-loved seems to say in cruciform repose. Someone had to have put the doll in pareidolia, the barn of polyester, into you many Easters ago. You, like I, know the dolars, the corruptibility of the self, cheeks blued and fingerprinted, scalp pocked with fingernails, mouth packed with arcane detritus. I intoned the apocryphal writing on your face, Talitha Kumi, the modeling clay and food oils caked on fig bush eyelash fall like scales, like spit and mud poultices for opening visions. I lift you reverently to inspect, worshipful, to listen to your sacred plastinated heart. Your eyes drop open. A parable. When the people asked, "What must we do to be saved?" the prophet said, "You want to be sure the murderers hate you. When those who play marimba with bombs on hamlets smother the lights and aim their turrets, their hatred must be white phosphorus hot toward you too. Because you've hampered the tank tread with your body, you've sandbagged your neighbor's house from shell fire. You have sabotaged the plant where biomass undesirables generate the genteel fuels of empire. Because they're coming to your name too, after the others. Rejoice if you're the one detested, because you, Bollard, did not let the settlement, self-organize and witness around defiant olive trees, scatter. Because you knew. If you were spared because you did not protest the death squads, you were one of them. Not done. When the people heard this, they went away sorrowful, because they had great goodwill with the captains, and much indeed, more than their neighbors, to lose. Elegy for the dried bonsai on my balcony. Reading it doesn't do justice to it, but I really struggled to get that shape. But it's half of a profile of a bonsai tree. I'd always been alarmed by the cruelty of the parable of the fig tree, but someone else had cursed you before you got to me on a tray, unwoven and pruned your roots, stunted you for the TNT I bought you from. In the stories, people tend trees as proxies for life. I did try to cultivate life, that is, see if it could survive outside myself and therefore within. My dear experiment, I could not water you enough or little enough. I had no secateurs like the ones the nursery you came from amputated your limbs with. I returned bushels of your leaves for a blanket. Thought I'd share my coffee grounds with you. I wondered about liquid fertilizer. Forgot the foods prescribed for your constricted throat. I thought the remains of the coastal day centering the house would nourish you enough, and thought the critical care of sun, light on the balcony would revive you. But it was winter and already too late. Did I place or abandon you out there? Think the rain would do my work? That the matches of meteorites would give you nitrogen? That you would fade into the light pool out back? And why do people plant children? I only know that once you were the answer. I used you to cultivate a laterite earth. Others, too, had young disallowed to grow, smothered by droughts of bright, contorted, deceived, and frozen in their reach for it, before the pruners took their sprouts of will. I wanted the same ornamental achievement for you, like many parents tend to. Dead ficus, can I blame you for not bringing leaves? Still, I have not let you rest. The conspiracy of algae is covering or cradling your roots now. I questioned my joy when I got you. Was I broken or finally whole? I've been unable to keep any plants alive. It's fascinating. I do try. I'm hardly keeping myself alive, so cut me some slack. With apologies to Uche, I'm going to read a food poem. So this is called Still Life with Bananas. I wrote it when I found out that humans share 60% of our DNA with bananas. Identical. I too am, by the way, 96% of our DNA is shared with chimpanzees, 60% with fruit flies. Make of that what you will. I'm full of useless information. I too am ripening sibling. You who are 3/5 of me by DNA. You got that fiber. You got those carbs. We grew out of shoots hiding desperately ramifying root systems. When one laden hand wilted, other offshoots appeared in its place. We have been perennial. We, reluctant immigrants, have known banana republics, new tropics before we were cut off. Our skins are worse for wear. Mine has been known to almost blanch in teary drops. Yours, outside the yellowing of ethylene rooms, surrenders to the encroaching black. I will not insult you by saying this. How I gorge on you was a sacrifice. My mouth stays hungry. Mine were crimes of opportunity or need. But if your fingers are mostly water like mine, if we're mostly alike, perhaps I was also betraying myself, replenishing myself, stalking my losses back faster. Thanks. This poem is called Ars Poetica because everyone knows you have to have an Ars Poetica poem or you go to jail. Auto surgery is not advisable, but I do it anyway. I'm used to being a fool. There was a guy in Antarctica who cut out his own appendix. That was a bad motherfucker. There's no other way to say this, forgive me. Although I find myself needing this, I myself am more sedate than brave. And doctors who feel faint, and doctors who felt faint in surgical theaters should know their limitations. In my field, I am the absence of sterile field. Nonetheless, I, Bachelor of Suspect Surgery, probe the entry I have finally sought into myself. I need a system of mirrors to see what I am now. I stumble around the cavernous fracture of my body with the grinding machines in its dank corridors. Do not cut what you cannot see, the teaching went. But what is that to me? The writhing thing in there, omentum or snake, must die or be cut free. I can't decide which. I cauterize, burn the geysers and their fountain show. I clamp rebellions up my cut edges. Retract, extract, abstract, tell it all in the notes. Physician, seal thyself. I must remember this after the monumental work is done. Thanks. That one's not from the new book. That one's not from the next book. It's I read it last October. This next one isn't from the new book either. It's called Burn Down. It was recently published in Ex Puritan. To have been deceived by the screed. To have men as gatherers instead of sorrows that begin to bulge within like a swelling liver against a rib. Such men would find themselves short of breath, because to be filled with something is to be emptied of another, the tenderness they have been taught to hunt and kill. Perhaps in realistic anthropological terms, they were the beasts being chased to exhaustion, or the gorge filled with wrecked men after the cliff edge. There is not enough width in your lacrimal canals to quell the fires below, but even if there were, you've never been taught to cry, never been shown a breakdown without a burn down, never been taught to rest a while. When you close your eyes, the hound dogs of oblivion continue their chase. Why give any ground? Why revisit the cold open every day begins with? Why regret the way you're being ground into component ores? So we act like the fissile raw materials that we should. The condo, row home, cul-de-sac warehouses hold a sequence of homemade reactor failures. Because there are fewer valorous wars to call the herd. Because we're an army of volunteers that can do it ourselves. If deaths of despair are a problem, get the Dolby surround, the wraparound visor, the haptic bodysuit, the sensory deprivation tank of sodium-rich whimsy. Better the pixel baptism than to encounter a self as mouse in a cocaine and electric chair machine. To glow the light bulb of oneself by oneself, to thus project a simpler story on a blank wall, is the mission, should you choose to accept. I watch a lot of nonsensical action movies. That's all I do. The book after the next one is going to be like cinematographic, using the tropes of action cinema. This is the last poem I'm going to read. It's the last poem in the book as well. It starts with a quote from a book called Near Shore. It is common for an animal, even in death, to resist its own deconstruction. Excuse me. It starts with a quote from Jacques Derrida and also quotes from Louis Gluck. The animal that therefore I am wakes daily, praise. I want, I want, I want. I want the poem again. Poetry as patricide, poetry as effigy burn, poetry as pen warm against my thigh in swordless alleys, a performance of heresy against warrants of silence. Poetry as the medically examined question, the flayed droop, the flesh disrobed, the extradited, planetary, the stone in a chaos of sluice. I dare demand the purity of a pain pared down, a pardon from the punishment of eagle-formed liver biopsies, new every day, internal incantation, anathema incarnate, resolute internal. I sense my metanoia. Everything returns, but what returns is not what went away. I am denuded, but I disrobe again. I deglove layers of the tube I am. I realize now that I do not wish to be repaired. I do not wish to be restored to any previous state. Why would I surrender the slag of loathing, its hardened alloy, the abalone shell youth fenestrated to light? I'd thought I'd needed an easier chair, but no furniture could help me feel at ease in the world. I'd wanted quiet, but the noise, the flood, is coming from inside my body. There must be weather at a black hole's mouth, a whistling song at that bottle rim. I am not masked. I have been entirely made of masks. But now, let me closer to the drain. I want to see what it takes and what is left. My animal ambulates from the pupa of sleep, the bonds of no, the dome beyond, toward the absolution of death that cannot forgive me, to the elegy withheld, to be cleansed by the finally burning house of memory. I calmly pick keepsakes within, under the darkening blanket, and a galactic entreaty of alarms. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you very much, Tolu. I was hoping you would have ended on the banana poem, so that way could have been a sort of aperitif for us. So thank you very much. Can we put our hands together for Tolu? And I think we should put our hands together for ourselves. So we're going to use the next 5 or 10 minutes to get some snacks, mingle, catch up with familiar faces and new friends, and then explore connections. So we'll be back in the next 10 minutes. And please don't stray too far from here. We look forward to having you back again. Thank you very much. Okay, so welcome back, and to those online, thank you for hanging in there. We really appreciate you showing up, and I hope you were able to get some snacks and beverages and some nice warming chit-chat. So we've come to the second segment of today's poetry reading. I would like to invite Hioma Uzomba, who is a spoken word artist and poet with publications in Ratu Magazine, Palimpsest Poetry, The Shore Poetry, Rising Phoenix Review, Chestnut Review, and Isele Magazine, among others. In 2022, Hioma was the winner of the Lagos-London Poetry Contest and is a Poetry Translation Center UK Undertow Fellow. Please, can we put our hands together for Hioma?
Everybody? Yeah. Okay. Being a spoken word artist, I will begin with a performance poem, and then I would read some poems from my poetry manuscript titled God is a Handful. Yeah. So a little background into my poems. I kind of go into, if you listen to my poems, you will hear the word father a lot, because I sort of juxtapose the absence of fatherhood that I had against sort of God as father. So yeah. It's hard to be the male child my father never had. Harder to stitch sorrow underneath skin, keep my feelings clenched like fists, hide my fears so they don't get leaked like sex tips. My father has shaped and brandished this tongue into a sword in despair. The surname is not yours if you do not speak the language, he says. What makes you Igbo if you do not speak Igbo, he says. Je m'élève comme actrice ou romancière en français, et ma prononciation du français est super et formidable. That's French for, I would never be hollow enough to cram a language I was never taught. I would never be butterfly enough to dazzle you. Nobody told me it would be this hard to live, this hard to breathe, so I learned the hard way. Adulting will teach you that little girls do not always twinkle like little stars. Nobody will catch a grenade for you, not even Bruno Mars. Adulting has taught me to trust no one except for my fingers, because at least I can count on them. Yeah, so the second poem is titled The Other Side of History, and it kind of dabbles into the appropriative mechanisms of colonialism. So, yeah. In the beginning was the war, and the war was with us, and the war was us. The beginning is an end that never ends. The beginning is always beginning. It begins with my country on its knees begging for mercy. It begins with my mother arcing into submission to a masculine god she serves. It begins with chaos, murder, 200 million people becoming a sea of heads. 1934. My great-grandmother's back was the open path on which a colonial master's whip rode like a horse. The strokes against her skin grew into an extension, wider than my family's tree. One day, she spun her wrapper around her waist like a wine tapper's belt and climbed to the highest coconut tree for a leap. She became the first ever gymnast to win a suicide medal in my family name. All she wanted to do was disappear from a world that didn't really see her. So I guess it was all part of giving up the ghost. 1985. My father hides the truth of our lineage in every glass of beer, swallowing the light of a new language to drown the evil of our past. 1934. My great-grandfather's chains held more thorns than Christ's crown. Do not tell me about salvation. History does not carry an old rugged cross. Neither does it set its mistakes on fire the way a town of black people was set on flames. 1956. Fear was the final gulp of beer my grandfather took before his voice became a suicide bomb, killing the truth. Do you know what it means to be ocean in a wine glass, or sunlight in dark brass, to be forestry but trimmed like green grass, to be person but not person enough? 2000. And I am the product of a history of forefathers and foremothers, clutching shame without the wherewithal. In every poem, my body is a vile thing, where I exorcise the god in my bones with morphine. I come from a long line of women, reaching for heaven with their hip bones in hand, if only to dislodge the arms of time. They would Delilah their way through the fire and make it out unscathed. So I'll be reading from my book. This one is titled God the Father, and it is a sequel to another poem titled God the Daughter, which tackles my relationship with my father in a very interesting way. So here goes. I recognize my father by the scars on his elbow, like a line of ants, some from the war, others from the bites I instilled, like little kisses, a love language. You must believe love is love even when you do not see it, even when the man sucking phlegm from your nose, gurgling it behind his throat to spit out the mass in a thud, turns his back to call you bastard. And in a bid to revive the corpse of memory, I watch my body sift through time like linens, my father lulling me to sleep with stories of the war, like the time his mother dug red earth and buried him in a hole for 3 days, the whole time he swallowed back sneezes and prayed that God would reverse his asthma like an ancestral curse, let the cup pass over him, so living is mere practice without consequence, or the time he grew leaner than impatient, leaner than any of the cows in Pharaoh's dream, and his mother, for want of breast milk, fed him the salt in fresh fish, so that his taste buds died to spice for good, or the time he lay underneath potato stalks, with other boys hiding from the rain of bullets, the gun's mouth, and the other men making soldiers of little boys. Once he knocked a tooth off, and another, trying to escape the fire. And loss multiplies in other places, like the cavities in a good night, and take care, and the absence that fills the air in place of an I love you too. Oh, my father, my father, my father, your love is as unruly as your hairline, refusing to recede but thinning nonetheless. I miss your answers to my prayers, your arms of forgiveness, your elbow, a boomerang bringing my childhood back in nooks, those playful bites that became relics for your skin to carry. I miss even the moments with your absence, as I adjust my disappointments like sleeves to the tempo of the night, hoping whatever brings you home is not the pulse of alcohol, not lust for some woman's body, not death again, please. Okay, top poem. Next poem is titled Manslaughter, and kind of pun here, because I realized that the word manslaughter could be pronounced as man's laughter with an apostrophe, so yeah. A fisherman's laughter is the last miracle at heaven's seashore, as he rows home with the day's catch and the glory of devotion tucked somewhere in his boat. The sun dies with a smile when the day returns swollen with promise of a greater catch. Where I come from, we say it is our ancestors laughing when the sea ripples. Once, I saw my grandfather's face in a wave, and he was still smiling, black skin on blue canvas. I imagined God as a very fat man, possessive of laughter, because who else puts a man in a garden and puts a serpent to tempt him, if not for comic relief? My professor once laughed before saying it was possible for a whole class to score all zeros in his course. These days, it is hard to tell where laughter ends and slaughter begins. Do you know, in every gunfight, the gun wins? What we call gunshots are the guns quaking with laughter as the losers press the triggers against themselves. I swear, I learned the phrase reverse psychology when a lover called me untrustworthy for finding the kiss stains on his shirt. The honest to God truth is, the best thing I ever did to my mind was lose it. All my life, I have learned to capitalize the Almighty God in writing, but there is power in reducing the status of the all-seeing in a poem. Call it slaughter. Laughter is one letter away from a knife in the truth. It is no coincidence that man's laughter becomes manslaughter when the apostrophe is taken away. Good grief. Is it a lie that the grave laughs with parted lips as each body makes its way home? A poet once said, in death, we laugh the hardest. And I knew it was true when I saw a man's body on fire and thought his skin written in the flames was a beautiful piece of art. Yeah. Okay. Next poem is titled The Kitchen as Slaughterhouse, which is quite interesting because not so regular things happen in the kitchen sometimes. So here goes. Today, the Messiah lays life down before a kitchen knife, and I see God in the yolk beaten into a pan, whisked till angry yellow, an evening sun. There is glory in the moment murder segues into martyrdom, as the knife chops with devotion, as blood spills, and the kettle whistles in prayer, as the fire throws open its lips to wring and swallow. When I stir the banga soup and it sours, I realize salvation impairs the soul too. When the buttermilk spoils the dish, I learn how lactose intolerant grief is. All my years, I have never seen anything walk into the kitchen and make it out alive. Not the hen, not the lamb, not my mother. Yeah. Okay. It's another poem. It's titled God as Postcolonial Love Bites. I'm kind of in a fight with God, so lots of God poems. Yeah. God as Postcolonial Love Bites. In conversation with a lover, I ask what his favorite kink is. He says love bites. I say same. And we laugh at our openings, all the places we leak absence. I tell him there's a word for it. How much of desire is a yawn? Trauma, he asks. Hunger, I reply. Starvation, you see. Well, that's the thing with wants. His response is the undulation of pulses. Buttons escaping buttonholes. Lips meeting. Gazes halting. Breaths racing. His teeth meets my neck at the juncture my father's kiss should be. Our pleasures fill the blank space. My palms meet his torso at the juncture a scripture should be. Desire fills the blank space. His organ meets my organ at the juncture a temple should be. Sin fills the blank space. The aftermath is temporary storage. You know what it is to be so empty. The idea of being bitten is a miracle. I swear, the only thing now between God and salvation is a plot twist, where nobody dies. Absence gapes, and loss simply endures. Yeah. This one's quite my favorite. It's titled, In Which I Cosplay Damsel in Distress So My 6'2" Igbo Boyfriend Can Play God. Yeah. And my Gen Z subconscious insists I do everything for the plot, including this false posturing where I lie. Let a man tear me open, so he chases the God in me out naked and takes up what space is left. My mother insists my father is the closest thing to God for her. And while I hate to agree, there is a semblance in this man's cheeks to the clownery of faith, of a Hebrew Messiah who sailed across the Atlantic to save my country, spread arms on a wooden cross and broke bread for a generation split-limbed by the shame of color. Right at dusk, when the body slows, I slice thin my expectations, if only to God the man I call lover. In an argument, he tells me, let's forget about history and philosophy. Let's go back to the very beginning when God made man in his image. And I do not pause midway to censor this false beginning. Do not resist this makeshift Messiah who thinks I need saving. I humor him enough to believe he is God over me, to think he can say to me, come, make your body a living sacrifice, and I will torch my black skin in obeisance, hands blue in submission. Yes, my Lord. Yes, come into me. Isn't that how martyrs are made? They offer themselves up to a God who stays silent while grief and all else lick their wounds. Isn't that how colonies are formed? They see somebody else build heaven on their land and tell them theirs is in the sky. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, so we've come to almost to the end of today's reading. And Yoma, thank you very much for that powerful representation of fatherhood, womanhood and motherhood, or femininity, and trauma. And in a way, I think it's quite fitting for this reading because I'm going to talk about, or I'm going to read poems about fatherhood. So some of the poems I'm going to read are about post-war masculinity, about trauma, about grief, and maybe I'll round it off with a poem about food, which might not be as delicious as the one evoked by Sam or as appealing as the one by Tolu. So I'll start with slightly somber, serious poems, and then end perhaps with something more light-hearted. So I'll read a poem from my latest poetry collection, and then I'll read from my forthcoming poetry collection, which is going to be published by the University of Calgary Press. So I'm not going to read my bio, so David already did that. So this poem is inspired by migrants drowning off the coast of North Africa. And I saw these photos. Well, if you just go on Google, you always see these heartbreaking photos of African and then migrants from Middle East trying to get to Europe, and they have to pass the Middle Sea or the Mediterranean Sea. And so most of the poems here were inspired by such happenings in that part of the world. So this poem is titled Body of Bones. At least migrants died in multiple shipwrecks off the coast of eyes they don't see. This body of bones tell. Ears they don't hear. Tails of bones. Nostrils they don't smell. Bones adrift. Bones ashore. Bones under sea. Mouth they don't speak. Bones breaking news. News breaking bones bearing histories. Hands they don't feel. Bodies that the water don't keep. Bones the water keep. Bones turn into silt. Bones returning to worms. Who's to blame for the bones that not see, that not hear, that not smell, that not speak, that not feel? The sea, its hunger deep enough. The land, its hunger deep enough. The boat, its hunger deep enough. Families on the shore, their hunger, they hunger deep as the ocean. So this one is titled The Sea is the Bridge. The sea is the bridge between home and horizon. The boat is two lips locked in prayer, trailing desire. The moon skims the bodies, gleaming like fish. The sea tucks her arms around bodies that the boat has shed. The sea, the boats, the moon, the bodies, they are fish bones in stories we do not share. Enough of the sea so we don't capsize. So I'll read a couple of poems on fatherhood and trauma, war, memories, and grief, and also love. So this suite of poems is just built around the images of post-war trauma, post-war masculinities, and the conceit revolves around a nuclear family, so a father, a mother, and a son. And this father happened to be an ex-soldier, and so he's dealing with trauma. And this, in a way, impacts the kind of relationship he has with the wife and the son. So in this collection, what I did was to tell each of these family members tells a story from their own point of view. So you have the father talking about his own post-war trauma, and then the mother talking about intimate partner violence, and then the boy talking about domestic violence and that. So in this part, the boy is talking about the father. It's titled, "My Father's Left Ear Has Been Hurting." My father's left ear hurts. He tells me to look in the canal of his ear, which he hardly cleans. He says there's a footpath snaking up a bombed-out village before the market where oranges wilt in baskets like dreams. Forgotten meat rots on sunlit slabs, the lamb's guts around which blowflies buzz. Past the river where bodies chewed by fish bloom like purple hibiscus, by the church dim with silences whose bells no longer speak in tongues. Down the civic hall where a rank of rats now preside over bylaws, my father's ear hurts. I find nothing there even as I squint. My father insists again that I look. Look inside. Can you not see the zinc sheets screaming? Can you not see the bullets roasting flesh? Can you not see families fleeing a legion of rifles? Do you not see the earth convulsing under a babble of footfalls? No, Father, I'm sorry. I don't see anything. Have you no eyes? My father snaps, his knuckles concrete and familiar, like the scars on his thigh. Look, you should, at least, see the hairless birds with featherless necks dancing around a wounded soldier. I squint harder. Wax as a wound is all I see. I don't tell him, knowing his anger is a bull yanked by his horn. I exclaim, a child prophet pacing the street. There are clouds in your ear, trapped but thundering. The next one is titled, "Sleep is Another Word for War." My mother says I should not miss my steps if on my way to pee, I see my father sitting like a cloud. Sometimes his eyes hot. He has seen enough. How the sun burns the world into ash. By this, she means, sleep is another word for fire. My mother says I should not lose a blink if I bump into an idol of my father sitting darkly on a chair. He will climb memory's ladder without rungs before the moon folds up its wool. By this, she means, sleep is another word for tactics. My mother says my father sometimes swims across the python of a lake in a country far from sight. By this, she means, sleep is not every man's shore. Sleep is another country up the hills. Some nights, his journey there is slow. So this particular poem is told from the mother's point of view. It's titled, "The Scars We Remember." I watch your father snore in my lap like a drunk staggering uphill. Cardamom soaked in gin clings to his skin. Hands tucked between his thighs, muscles loosened in his shoulders. Belly a box without music. How exposed the flame tree looks once the wind unhooks its fists. My hands suspend like cleavers above his head. My hands waver before I cradle him. The hand is how bodies cross distance. The hand is how bodies spawn proximity. The scar that stings afresh is from people we share the most space with. So this poem is slightly, well, it's different from the other poems I've read. So I see this poem as a work in progress. I happened to write it, I think 2 days ago. I was on a writing retreat in Camo, and I saw geese flying home. And so this image of geese flying home recalled for me my own homesickness or struggles with negotiating home in Canada. And so this poem offers me a way to think about migration, memory, homesickness, but also this recurring specter of war in different parts of the world. So it's titled Field Notes on Home. Domus 1, Childhood. How does one think about time? Your childhood home walled by papayas and guavas. Time was power cuts and mischief, no leftovers in the bin. Domus 2, Desire. Every holiday is a longing. Kids on swings, laughter in the air. Mist wafting from the hot tub packed with teens, bare-chested, voices go off like fireworks. Domus 3, Love. How does one think about distance? Sit on the porch, beer in hand. In your head, a girl spirals down the giant yellow slide, plunging, legs forced into the cool, water splashing over shoulders. Domus 4, Memory. The skein of geese fades in the sky. Remember. The image of that dust-covered woman on TV, crawling out a rare insect from the cranny of the wreck that once was a house. Domus 5, Home. Ask the world again. How might you think about home when the fighter jets have long gone? The landmark is all dust, and we've started cleaning up the debris. Someone out there will no longer have a place to call home. Thank you very much. So thank you very much once again. I am deeply honored and delighted for such a welcoming space for us, Tolu, Sam, and Ioma. Maybe we should all come out and then do sort of courtesy or bow, which is more appropriate. Please, can you, Tolu, Ioma, before we hand over to David. Let's come and feel like superstars.
Feel bad. Put it here so it doesn't look like it's mine. Do us a group photo.
See, single onion. So on behalf of these amazing poets, I really appreciate David Martin, Shelf Life Books, and every one of you for coming to hear us read and then supporting David to keep this flame of community burning. And I hope we'll continue to support Single Onion poetry reading in whatever way or in our own little way we can. And David, I don't want this to be like a validation, but thank you very much. And just in case any of you want to chip in something, please do. And then David will come and we'll wrap up the event nice and smooth. And then at least we still have some place to call home.
Thank you. This is
Thanks,
lovely. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much to Uche for being our guest curator. That was amazing. And also all the poets this evening. Just a couple of quick announcements. If you want to find out more about the Single Onion, you can find us on Facebook. You can go to singleonion.com. We're on Twitter. We are now on Instagram, thanks to Audrey. Yeah, I didn't want to do it, so I'm glad she did it. And we have an email list that you can sign up for on our website. And I know a lot of people are ditching social media with good cause. So maybe sign up for our email list. We won't spam you with our multi-level marketing stuff. I want to give a big thanks to the Canada Council for the Arts, the League of Canadian Poets, Calgary Arts Development, the Writers Guild of Alberta, and Shelf Life Books for being our host. I want to give a big shout out to the Single Onion crew. We've got Kirk Miles, Laurie D. Roadhouse, Paul Marshall is right there, Paul Kelly, Will Lawrence was here, and Josephine Leray. And yes, And thanks to Audrey for being our tech superstar. And thanks to all of you for coming out. Our next event is going to be March 20th back here. And it's going to be an event celebrating Indigenous poets with a guest curator, Caitlin Purcell. And is there an open mic coming up? Yeah. When's the open mic? March 6th at first Thursday. Yeah, so it's a new...
IoT space.
Okay, yeah, Inside Out Theater. I should have written this down. And Cobra Collins will be the featured poet, but it is an open mic, so come on and sign up for that. I think that's it for me. Thanks to all of you for coming out. I'm glad it warmed up. And there's probably a few more snacks over there. Check out the books at the front. Check out the beautiful poetry section here. It's the best in Calgary. And have a wonderful evening. Thank you.